My name is Nina. I'm from the People Power Institute. Siguro na itatanong nyo, what is People Power Institute and what are we doing here? Essentially, we're a nonprofit organization that is working to nurture civic participation, and democracy building and civic engagement in political life. So we're here to present basically the taong bayan perspective of Metro Manila. Our experts have spoken. We've seen a preview of a very positive and very good green print. So we're here to just ask basic questions and to point out, the basic wish list of people who live in Metro Manila. So, okay. So, when I saw this image, it brought me back to simpler times. Of course, when I used to have Lego, but times when I grew up in a village where I could bike, I could run, I could play patintero, go up the bakod, tapos gumagawa ng bubble soap out of gumamela. So, I think anyone younger than people born in the 80s won't be able to relate with these realities anymore. But for a lot of us, let's reimagine a city, and this was echoed earlier, where we can walk or bike to work. Diba? I live near my workplace, but unfortunately, even if I live near the CCP area, and even if I try to walk or bike to work, pagdating ko sa opisina, ang baho-baho ko na, diba? Amoy jeep, tapos pag umulan, delikado, the Vito Cruz area, konting ulan lang, babahain ka na. So, even if there was the will to bike or walk to work, our physical structures make it impossible for us to do so. Next, please. When walkable cities, and we've discussed this all earlier, walkable, bikeable cities are really reflections of roads that are built for people, and we've also talked about this today. Breathable air. I cannot imagine having to walk around with a gas mask on. Diba? I just don't want to do that. But sadly, if you wanted to walk or bike around Metro Manila, sometimes you have to do that. A walkable city also means there's no crime on city streets. I live near the Taft area, and how many students have gotten held up just outside their school? Diba? So a walkable city also means it's safe for people to actually step out. Hindi yung tatawid ka lang from one class to another, nanakawan ka na. And this was again brought up earlier, a walkable city means people live near where they work. It means there are opportunities for people nearby and there are housing structures for people nearby. So actually, maganda yung pagtackle ng mobility because as Dr. Danielle pointed out, it's really the vein that goes through the entire metropolis. When we talk about mobility and transport, we talk about everything that affects us. So this is our start-off point. But here are other things on our wish list. I also got a photo of Guangzhou. So imagine a city where it's easy to move around. Again, who here gets from place to place in 30 minutes or less? Really, sir? On a bicycle. See? But where do you ride your bicycle? I mean, I really wish all of us could do that. And we're hoping for the day when more of us would be able to take our bikes to work and hop from meeting to meeting. One of the biggest expenses, if you look at your daily expenses, one of your biggest expenses would be transport. Even when you compute the time that you spend each day, a lot of it is lost to traffic. I've decided not to drive, for instance, kasi gusto ko, kaya nasa FX ako, o nasa taxi, o nasa bus, I can check my email on my smartphone and not worry about where to park, am I going to run into somebody. So you just want to be able to move around seamlessly in a city where it's not so painful to move from one appointment to another. This also means, and we don't have an image for it here, but one of our wish lists for a reimagined Metro Manila is sana mas maraming public Wi-Fi spots so that people can actually telecommute. Maybe maybe with advances in technology, more and more people would be able to work from home, or there would be telecommuting days. So people won't have to spend every single day of their working lives maybe stuck in 3 hours of traffic just to get to work, just to get things done. I mean, it is already possible. Next, please. This really means, just to go back to transport, and as mentioned earlier, accessible, interconnected public transport. They've spoken about BRTs, facilities for PWDs and the elderly. It was also mentioned earlier that it's so discouraging to walk up the footbridges. Diba? Paano kung senior citizen ka, ikaw si lola na nagko-commute, wala kang choice kung hindi umakit sa footbridge na napakasakit sa paa. It's very uncomfortable. And it really isn't safe if you're not a very balanced person. And we really want to see the end of traffic jams. It was also pointed out earlier that 70%, I think, of traffic is caused by private vehicles. Is that the correct interpretation? So, next slide, please. Every single day, this is the reality we face. Diba, may tumatawid pa sa hindi dapat tawiran. So, this kind of environment affects everything. It affects our health. It affects our mood when we get to the office, diba? Pagpasok mo pa lang ng office, mainit na yung ulo mo kasi ganito yung pinagdaanan mo. Lalo na kung umulan, kahit 30 minutes lang yung ulan, it's possible for you to get stuck already in traffic. That is no way to run a city. It's no way to run, for us to be productive. And it's no path to competitiveness. We cannot have days like this anymore. Next slide, please. Can anyone guess where this is? I took this from a BlackBerry of Luneta. And when I saw this, sabi ko, wow, ang ganda pala niya. It's easy to take public spaces for granted because we hardly have any and we don't know how to use them. And diba, when people say, oh, let's go to Luneta, ay, cheap, ay, baduy. And I've actually been told by some friends, wag kang pupunta dyan mag-isa kasi delikado. And it's a tragedy for anyone living in a city who can't even have access to green public spaces. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, this is Central Park. This is nowhere near us, but we want to be able to also give space for people, ordinary people, to just hang out, to converge, maybe to learn certain things. Because, next slide, please. Why should malls be the center of urban life? There's something lost there when families spend Saturdays and Sundays going to the mall. Tapos anong gagawin mo sa mall? Kakain ka, mag-iikot ka, manood ka ng sine. Minsan magpapalamig ka lang kasi 'di ba wala kang pera. Actually magsisimba. In a way, maybe gano'n na talaga yung evolution. The mall has become the plaza. But there's something lost there when we've lost our relationship with the earth, trees, with the ground, and when our primary relationship with the city is built around concrete. It's really very sad, and it makes you think about, what about the next generation of children? Hindi na sila marunong magpatintero. Hindi na sila marunong magbike kasi nag-iPad na lang sila or nag-arcade games. And it's the kind of consciousness that also makes people boxed into certain realities, very removed from sustainability and from the earth. Next slide, please. I think this was from Cuba. Imagine a city where we can grow our own food. Urban agriculture is now being tested, or I guess has had some success in other areas, and we're looking forward to the day when our high-rise buildings can actually house some, urban chic farms. Where you won't have to go all the way to Tagaytay to grow your basil or your lettuce. Baka naman merong solutions because at the end of the day, we also want to be able to feed our people. And again, it's just going back to basics. We're looking for ways for our cities to be sustainable, to be self-sufficient, so that people won't have to spend so much to get the basics, just like food and, and nutrition. Next slide, please. Or where rain can be reused. I'm a fan of Attorney Oposa, who I think just yesterday or the other day was testing out rainwater catchment systems. And I think he's also a proponent of road revolution, which initiated all of these road openings. Sabi niya, wag yung isipin na road closure. Kasi you're closing it to cars, but you're opening it to people. So imagine if we can have little innovations like these. And in one of our conferences called Reimagine Pilipinas bukas, si Waway Saway, one of our famed indigenous musicians, said his vision for Metro Manila, or at least for the Philippines as well, is for the Pasig River to be potable in 25 years. I mean, if Singapore can process wastewater, why can't we? Baka naman pwede na siya in the future. Next slide, please. Oops, sorry. Okay. Imagine a city that can create its own energy. I'm no expert. I'm here as a citizen giving my wish list for a greener metropolis, a more livable metropolis. We consume so much energy, but we have, maybe potentially a lot of space that can be reused, can be innovated for us to be able to create our own energy. There are now waste to energy technologies. Of course, there's solar, there's wind, there's everything else. Pero why do those technologies have to be concentrated in the rural areas? Again, I'm no expert, but I'm reimagining and I'm dreaming. Next slide, please. And again, as I mentioned, and process its own waste. I think this is from Singapore, if I'm not mistaken. But next slide, please. I cannot imagine how we've lived for decades deeming this acceptable. A few years ago, sorry, I'm getting emotional, but a few years ago, I typed on Getty Images the word Manila. And in that screen, this was in 2008, I think. When I typed Manila on Getty Images, out of the first 20 images, around 11 of those images were similar to this. Garbage, children swimming in garbage, and this was even before those campaign jingles saying, nakalangoy ka na ba sa dagat ng basura. So that was the image that the international community for photographers, journalists were getting of Manila when you type a simple word in Getty Images, which is an image bank. This is the image we're projecting. And a lot has changed now, that's certain. But these are still realities. And I cannot imagine what kind of future children like this, who did not choose to be born here, what kind of injustice are we allowing to happen when people live like this, but all around, there are also pockets of development, so it's very inequitable. So again, it also goes back to what Ma'am Tina said about housing, socialized housing and opportunities. It's really about opportunities, because if we're able to get rid of, if we're able to do something about this, then everything gets better down the line. Next slide, please. Okay, this is an advocacy of the People Power Institute. We're big supporters of the AntiApple. I'm going to use my last minute to talk about governance, I guess. Imagine a city where there are no apples, where where you don't wake up with unsightly billboards, and pasensya na lang po if there are people na natatamaan dito, but for ordinary citizens, it's visual assault to see all of these things when public service posts, public service announcements can actually be done tastefully. Maybe we can even institute, standardized signages for public service announcements and just contribute to the overall aesthetic of the place. But beyond that, beyond the aesthetic, next slide, please. This is really how I close. We reimagine a Metro Manila that is really run with responsible public service. Because if you look at everything, walkable cities, which means less crime, less pollution, it really goes down to governance. We're looking for basic services to be the standard so that you don't have to thank your mayor just for creating a road for you. Kasi dapat merong ganyan. Dapat may road, dapat may sidewalk, dapat may waiting shed, dapat merong bus terminals. Why do we have to thank our government for services that they should be giving us with money that we give from our own taxes? We want cities that work. That is the bottom line. Cities that work for us and work for the majority of us, and not just for those with cars, with condos, with the money to spend in very nice subdivisions. And the bottom line is, this will be my last slide. Okay, why should green, walkable, livable cities be reserved only for the rich? Again, this is the people's perspective. This is People Power Institute and the citizens talking na, paano kung wala kang pera mag-invest sa condo or tumira sa exclusive subdivision or umikot ng nakakotse. And this is also the heart of inclusive mobility. We want to be able to create cities that work for the humblest of citizens and where it can do the most good. So just to close, what we're also doing, and we're happy to be part of this, is that we're initiating a series of conferences and conversations called Reimagine Pilipinas. We've started it already in Luzon. We had one in Cebu. We're doing one in Mindanao. But we are looking forward to organizing a Reimagine Metro Manila conference with as many stakeholders as possible, because as we've seen, nagsusnowball na yung efforts. It's really time for all of us to come together to reimagine and create a shared vision, a new vision for Metro Manila, so that people who live here will maybe be happier, more productive, less stressed, less caught up in traffic, and more able to live the lives that they really deserve to live. Thank you very much.